This is an interview from a band that has become near and dear to my heart ever since we saw them. And upon listening to their last two albums, they are worth checking out. So this is our interview with Dave from Atræ Bilis. We had a great conversation, really enjoyed a lot of his in-depth thinking. What
Yep.
an amazing guy.
Take it away. Oh, nice shirt. I love that album. Yeah.
Oh, this is actually my favorite
Mm.
Mortician record. I was
Hmm.
talking with Roger. We dropped by his store when we were in Vegas. I think it was in April. And this I I, I believe he recalled this was like his favorite production. Even though most people prefer Chainsaw Dismemberment.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I've always wanted to do a Mortician cover, but I guess they've become such a, I don't know, household name for being that knuckle dragging band. They've you
It'd be
know,
cool to hear it with like an actual live drummer instead of the drum machine. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah.
yeah. Did you hear the final Bloodbath sessions? The
No, I
album?
don't think so. I'm a Hector
Oh,
for barbecue. That's my big one. Yeah.
oh yeah. No, I'd suggest checking out Final Bloodbath session. It's an album that they did with the live lineup with Ron, the guitar player from Malignancy, Roger, their guitarist but playing drums, and Will. It's a three-piece, and they re-recorded all the classic Mortician records without samples and live
Oh,
drums.
nice. Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's really good.
I'll have to
Yeah,
check it out. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I read that you're originally from Australia. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
So how did you end up in where you live now? How did you get to Canada?
So the band's based in Vancouver, BC. Um, I some years ago, 2017, I had a working holiday permit, which is pretty easy to get across. I guess like brother sister Commonwealth countries, so South Africa, England, Australia, Canada. Um, I had one of those in my back pocket, and I just kind of needed to leave my life in Australia and do some soul searching. So I thought it would be a good idea to utilize the working holiday visa that I had in Canada. I didn't have any real plans. Originally, I thought that I'd end up kind of staying somewhere between Toronto and Montreal, but at the time that I flew in, things just weren't really falling into place there. So I figured that I'd come to the West Coast before flying back, and I was offered a job. So I decided to hang back. Shortly after that, I met Luca, the drummer, and started music again. And I've kind of been here since. So, COVID kind of happened. I know that's a dirty word, but, for 2.5, 3 years, I was kind of anchored here. And so our first two releases um, were released during that time. So whether I liked it or not, I was kind of shackled here for that time anyways. Australia was not dealing with things as well as some other places during that time. And since then, I'd become a permanent resident and then a citizen. So I have the freedom to come and go as I please now. But it was primarily the music that's kept me here. Yeah.
So we were really impressed with your guitar playing. And as soon as we were really after your show, really given all your, back catalog and your current album a good listen, Mark was like, he's good. I bet he writes. And sure enough, then we saw the credits, lyricist. I'm like, you were right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When did you
Oh,
start playing guitar, and were you self-taught or did you have instruction?
originally I was a bass player for many years, and in the first serious band where I was writing music, I was doing that as a bass player, and I'd compose songs on the bass and with the drum machine, and I'd kind of go over to the guitar player's place with the drum machine and the songs pretty much mapped out in like sketch form. I'd show him the guitar riffs and he'd change them a little bit or add details and flourishes and things, make them feel more like his own. And that was the writing process for a long time. And I guess uh, at at a point in my life, I just kind of got tired of that process. It just kind of made a little more sense for me to buy a guitar and just teach myself how to get by enough that I could just get demos done, just so that I could articulate my ideas to other musicians. I never really considered myself to be a guitar player. I still don't. I think, you know, a music person is a better suited term that I identify with a little more. But I guess in doing that, playing more guitar at home, I got to a point where other projects had developed where I had been playing guitar, and then they turned into live projects, and then they turned into touring projects, and then they turned into studio recording projects. And for that reason, it became, you know, I kept at it because it was just more efficient use of my time and my energy. I don't have the time and the energy to learn lots of different instruments, but I guess for playing, you know, metal music and stuff, it's a pretty useful tool to have in writing songs at the very least. And I guess as a bass player, I did receive lessons. I was pretty self-indulgent. I admit that the reason, the main thing that I was interested in the lessons at that time was being able to take in songs from bands that I liked, and my teacher at that point would transcribe those songs for me. So in addition to tablature and going to those lessons, I was able to kind of learn the language of death metal and grindcore and black metal and stuff, and then take what I'd learned from that and then incorporate it into my own stuff, my own hobbies. As a guitar player, I maybe had a couple of formal lessons, but I think it was more just to connect with that teacher at that time, because I enjoyed him as a bass teacher. He was the same guy, but it was probably only like maybe 2 or 3 lessons or something like that. And since then, if I'm trying to figure something out, I'll typically try and jam with a guitar player that's well above my standards and try and learn from them, or I'll just try and be as like observant as I can with like YouTube and things like that. Yeah.
It's so hard when you're taking lessons. You know, I had been, my parents got me an organ when I wanted a piano, and I went to this teacher, and she wanted me just to do stuff that she wanted me to do. And I wanted to do rock, you know. I was like, let me do Dancing in the Dark or something on this organ, and, you know, Broken Wings. And she's like, no, you're doing Merry Christmas, Darling. And I like fired her. I'm like, I'm not doing it. Not.
Yeah, I get it. Like I get the 2 sides of it. Like I do understand that you need to walk before you can run, and a lot of the very basic things are usually not the types of things that enamor us to try and be a master at any craft. Like I'm sure that if you wanted to learn how to fly a plane, you'd probably want to be able to do backflips and stuff in it and all the fun things.
Right.
But you first got to learn how to take off and land safely. So if you need to spend however many hundreds of hours doing that, you might think, oh, come on. But, you know, on the same token, there does need to be a little bit of a balance. But what I have learned is when you have your own time to practice, there's no rules. There's nobody standing over you like a warden saying, you have to do this right now. Like, yeah, you might have to appease a teacher with certain exercises and practice certain things. But after you've done that, if you want to take on other things and practice other things, there's like, that's your freedom. You can absolutely do that. So yeah.
I see the ton of books behind you. I figured you must be a reader with coming up with the anatomy of melancholy from the 16th century.
Yeah.
Well,
Where'd you come across that?
oh well, my books are actually on this Kindle right here. These
Ah.
are all VHS tapes of dumb movies that I like to watch. I'm a big movie person as well. But yeah, I do love to read. The Anatomy of Melancholy, like many other books in my life, not to sound overly superstitious, find you. You know, I find that if you're open and perceptive and used bookstores and things like that, you'll often gravitate toward a book for some unknown reason. And The Anatomy of Melancholy was one of those books. I found it here when I was living in Vancouver, when I first started living here in Vancouver, from a place called Massey Books, and they've got quite an eclectic collection of books. And I don't normally read a whole heap of philosophy, but since reading The Anatomy of Melancholy, I'd put it in the same lineage of a book similar to The Body Keeps the Score, which is quite a recent popular book about how the body stores trauma, and how to be more connected with how your body is affected by stress and other things. There's a few hundred years between those two books, but
Right.
they are trying to discuss the same theories, which I find to be quite interesting. There were a couple of different band names that we originally discussed, but in its English translation, Black Bile, we thought was quite a strong title. But like a lot of our themes in the band, we try not to be so overtly obvious with our intent. And so I think when you understand that Atræ Bilis is Latin for black bile, it's cooler than just saying this is what it is.
Yeah.
But that's a personal thing. And black bile or Atræ Bilis describes one's sense of melancholy, at least in the anatomy of melancholy. So yeah, that's where the band term it. Well, it was originally just suggested, and yeah, I find that the longer that the band is a band, the more naturally we kind of lean into those themes. And the last interview that I did, actually, the interviewer had made a pretty strong point of underscoring that their major sense of the record was that there was a big undertone of melancholy. So I guess in some ways it's cool. In some ways it's kind of sad, but in some ways it's kind of cool that it does, tie in with the band name as well. So
I thought it was neat in the book that was the reason. It was always things were out of balance. So if you had too much of this black bile, then you were sad. It's kind of an interesting way to think about, your body and depression. And doctors these days, I mean, trying to deal with, your melancholy or depression, it always seems like they want to medicate it. In your opinion, what is the best way to get a release from it?
Well, I don't think that running away from it is the right thing. I certainly don't think that putting a Band-Aid solution is the thing. I mean, I'm no specialist in this field, and I still definitely have my own personal battles with mental health. And, there are things that I integrate into my daily life to try and manage things to the best of my ability, movement. So getting exercise in, meditating, and just kind of listening to my own feelings and trying my best to communicate those. Although sometimes I'm not best at that. I do try. But I would say that if you're feeling upset, the best thing to do is to talk about it, and just kind of try and purge it from your body. And that can either be through conversation, or even if you need to say something but you might not necessarily feel like there is a pair of ears to listen, maybe writing it down on a piece of paper can be very I don't want to say gratifying, but like a healthy way to just kind of purge that out. And I think life also starts at the end of your comfort zone. So maybe if a person is feeling very complacent, like that, at least for me anyways, has often been where a sense of melancholy and sadness has resided. as well. It's when my life kind of feels stagnant and I'm not pushing myself. And when I'm not pushing myself, I'm not feeling proud of myself. When I'm not feeling proud of myself, I'm feeling sad about myself. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to make sure that, and you are a product of your environment. If you feel that you're in a toxic environment, it's just absolutely not worth anything. It's not worth money. It's not worth your time. It's not worth anything. So I think you've just kind of got to give yourself that pep talk in the mirror and just remind yourself that you are valuable and you are worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so weird, like different cultures. We interviewed this band from Norway, and their drummer had a lot of mental health issues, but you're not supposed to talk about it over there because culturally that's burdening someone else. You're just supposed to keep it in. I was like, wow, that's horrible.
Mhm.
Because sometimes if you have a worry and it's in your head, if you say it out loud, all of a sudden it doesn't have that much power over you, and it makes
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to let it out. Yeah, you absolutely do.
Mhm.
So I noticed now homicide and is it hexapenapine? That's a hard one to say.
The Anthropocene.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yes.
homicide, yeah, that's a hard one to say. They both kind of start with an instrumental. Is that like planned as kind of like a mood setter, or is it just something that you like to do first?
So we've always had an intro instrumental track that kind of set the mood before the lyrics and the themes are introduced, with typically the first song. What was different about Homicide was we, we're big listeners of vinyl records, and we do believe that there's two sides to a record. And when we think about music, we often think about light and dark and contrast and counterpoint and just the dichotomy of having two. So it felt like there needed to be another instrumental opener for side B, which was Homicide. So there's 10 tracks. So track 1 and 5 are both instrumentals, kind of splitting the album in half.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not sure what else to say to that, in that I guess this is just a project of duality and a doubling, a set of as above and below, and that's how we decided to name our record. Instead of side A and side B, A is above and B is below as well. We thought was quite coincidental, but very interesting as well.
I thought the cover art was really cool for this record, and it seems like you might have gotten some controversy about it. Was there
Just
something?
based on your post where you're like, you know what, we don't care.
Yeah. What's the story
Was
with
there
that?
some weird reactions?
Thanks. I appreciate that. I think everybody's entitled to their opinion, and whenever you release anything, you're subject for everybody to be the professional and go online and express how they feel, and that's fine too. But the post on our Instagram, if that's what you're referring to, it was the intent of that was primarily, again, twofold. First was to empower the artists that worked behind the sculpture, because it's not AI. And it felt like from some comments online, many people had circled back to feeling that there was this sense of facetiousness that we had because it was AI, which it wasn't. So the post, in addition to empowering Grey House Studios, who are an incredible team, and we cannot say enough positive things about them, it was also just to kind of remind people that just like, we're not taking shortcuts. with this band.
Yeah.
And although we could, we just want to let you know that we're not, and hopefully the people that had decided that it was AI, I'm hoping that it just makes them feel a little more uncomfortable that it is a very real object and it is a photograph
Yeah.
of an authentic manifestation. And if that's more disturbing, good. I want them to be. Mm.
I love that you actually had the pictures of it, and like the different, hands-on approach. It was neat, and I was like, I just hope that people can appreciate that and not give you flack without. Some people flip out about a band's name sometimes, like the fucking Champs, and they don't know anything about it. They just choose
Mhm.
one thing to flip out about.
Everybody
Mhm.
thinks everything's AI now. It's so
Yeah.
ridiculous. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. It makes me a little. It makes me feel a little deflated that people have lost faith in artists' capacity. But in some ways, I guess it's also quite flattering that people feel that it could only be generated through artificial intelligence, which is kind of poetic because the themes on the record is all about integrating technology to manipulate human spirituality. So I don't know. It's not for everybody, and in some ways, it's an interesting vetting process. If people are going to judge anything by its cover, they're not going to read the book.
yeah.
And if somebody has decided that this is a record that they're not going to listen to, that's cool. Like we didn't write this record or start this band for anybody but ourselves. So I'm not going to try convince anybody that like you should listen to our music. Like if you want to, and if you've got an open mind and you listen to similar bands than we listen to, here's our gift to you. We hope that you enjoy it. If not, that's cool. Go listen to your whatever it is.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's very good. It really draws you in, like what is going on here, and you can tell there's a story.
Well,
So
I was curious,
Yeah.
was the last album also a concept album?
Yeah, all of our releases are concepts. Yeah.
Do you it sounds like, I mean, that's got to be more difficult to put together an album on a concept each time,
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think once you have a robust concept, it's quite easy to break it up into chapters and get excited about how to create a narrative that's interesting, that flows. I don't actually know how it would be possible for a band like Atræ Bilis just to write single songs because there's so much consideration that goes into our themes that we wouldn't have enough time to explore those themes in individual songs. If we have 3 to 6 minutes to write a story, it wouldn't really be a story. It would just be it wouldn't even be a trailer. It would just be I'm not even sure what it would be. In some ways, it would just be a mess because it wouldn't really feel like there'd be a head or a tail to it. So for this band, anyways, it's not the lyrics aren't normal in the sense of I feel this way, I'm expressing myself this way. There's actually no me or I's in our lyrics. And secondly, our song structures are not verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, chorus. So why would we have lyrics that would fit that type of song arrangement?
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. So, but yeah, you are right. Yeah, there is more. So.
I like the fact that you kind of even make up your own words, like homicide. Like it's like obviously that's the killing of something, but I like how you come up with these concepts that are so out there. You need to make your own word. So I was just trying to figure out like what would the definition of homicide be?
So I guess it's connecting two words. Just like divine nihility was two words and apex sapien was two words. Ormicide is Orm. So AUM, which is also spelled OM, which is the mantra, Om, which is the sound of the universe. And aside is the killing or the death of. So Ormicide is the death of oneness. Yeah.
Very heady stuff. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I did. How did you kind of come up with this concept of this victim in this lab undergoing levels of hell? It kind of almost seems like a sci-fi Dante's Inferno, but
Mhm.
kind of. And does the victim have a name, or is it just kind of all of us?
No, it's a test specimen. And the test specimen is again coming back to that word heady. Like I do have the artistic liberty of not really being too boxed in with any specific idea or constraint. But the test subject is actually supposed to be like the lowest possible caste, which I thought was interesting. That case systems as we have typically known them have often been reserved to like quite a luxurious hedonistic life or just like work around kind of people. But what if there was like a case that was even lower than that? So you didn't even have an opportunity to work. It was just you were just used. You were just farmed for other people to do as they please with. So that's kind of the loose origin of the entity that's pictured. As far as the initial kernel that sparked this concept and our previous concepts often have come from epiphanies, just personal epiphanies. This was this was inspired by two core songs on the album. The first is Inward to Abraxas and the other is A Monolith Aflame. And it's quite personal in that during the profound experience, I had met my inner self. And it was a very powerful experience. I had envisioned my spirit to be a flame, this endless flame, this vertical flame, shooting as far as there is a vanishing point downward as there is upward. And there were these clusters, these grayish tendril orbs that were apparently trying to like douse my flame, my inner self. And when I was under the influence of this compound, I was able to go and acknowledge what these orbs were. And these orbs personified these particular personalities that had been quite traumatic in my personal life and events and addictions and family members. And I won't go into that because that is too personal to be airing. But offline, I'm happy to talk to anybody about that. And the journey inward to get to that point, I had realized that to get there, Kingdom of Cortisol is another track that signifies that I was supposed to be this healthy, strong person, but really I was just like a nervous system of just like stress, and I just was not looking after myself. So it was a very healthy experience, and I was able to acknowledge older, younger versions of myself and be at peace through that. But through the throes of an incredibly intimate experience with myself, I was able to write down my experiences and then have lyrics that were inspired by what it's like to try and look inside spiritually. And then the artistic liberties came with, well, what if you could control that with a person? How could you design a system that can manipulate one's inner self and their spirituality? How could you delete their God, their faith? And the test specimen on the cover represents a nervous system that has been punctured with electrical conduit directly into its nervous sensory system, so that at any point an external stimulation can force certain parts of the body to send signals to the brain so that it's processed as a new trauma, and deliberately put a ceiling over its ability to sense any faith, hope, love, etc. So I took a very personal and healthy experience that I had, and of course, you know, the horror fiend in me kind of looked at that and thought, fuck, like, how cool would it be if we were able to design a prototype system that can be used in a positive or an extremely negative way? And what would that outcome be if successful? Like, how would that affect the world as we know it and our sense of interconnectedness? So that's kind of where the primal origins of Ormicide were inspired by, and that's kind of how the cover ties in, and you know, the artistic liberties around it to conceptualize all of that.
I feel like I understand it.
Well, that was really good explanation. Yeah, really good.
Yeah, in fact, I think you answered a couple of my
Before I
questions.
forget, I wanted to ask you, like, what in Australia, what do you have any stories about any? We always think that the deadliest everything lives there, the biggest spiders, the craziest sharks. Do you have? What was your experience there? Did you ever encounter some deadly beast when you lived there?
Well, I mean, I went to go see Alien Romulus last night, and I just thought, with all these face huggers, they're just domestic huntsman spiders, really, to an Australian.
I mean, is it as bad as we think in America, that you just all of a sudden look up and there's a giant tarantula in the corner of your room? I mean, is it really like that there?
I will say, it's usually the big things. They're not as venomous as the brightly colored things. There's a few exceptions. The creatures you need to be aware of is anything with like a white or a red tip on it, typically. Snakes aren't fun. Jellyfish aren't fun. Grass isn't fun. Yeah, nothing's really fun. No, I'm kidding. It's not too bad. You know, if you're living in a built up area, you know, if you have electricity and roads and stuff, typically you know, you're not expecting to open up your washroom and there's a boa constrictor or a Komodo dragon there waiting for you.
Komodo dragon. Wow. Yeah.
But I will say one thing about the animals. Yeah, I'm plant-based, so I love animals, but the birds in Australia are so fucking loud. Waking up to what sounds like, I don't even, it's it's deafening. It is.
Wow.
It's crazy. I do not miss birds waking me up with incessant squawking. I love birds, but if you live in a particularly leafy area,
Mhm.
you know, not quite in the sticks, but you know, the suburbs ish, expect to be woken up as soon as the sun is up by what just feels like an endless sky of birds. So, you know, and that's just a selfish I want to sleep kind of thing going on there. If I was awake and had a
Yeah.
coffee, I'd be feeling very different. But you know, trying to
Yeah.
catch up on sleep on weekends, the birds
Yeah.
can be annoying. Yes.
Yeah. Crack of dawn. I don't blame you.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel your pain. I tend to get harassed by, I don't know what it is with me and birds, but like last year we found a little fledgling bird and Mark was feeding it spiders and we got it back to health. And then this year it was this gorgeous baby robin. And when they're little, they look like little hawks. And he was just sitting on our fence for the longest time. So I would talk to him. And I don't know if he's imprinted on me, but if I'm in the garden, he will dive bomb me to this day. Or if I'm talking to the cat, he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna try to land on your cat," because he thinks that we're all friends now. I'm like, "Stop."
There you
She's sort
go.
of like
Yeah.
she's sort of like Snow White with the birds. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They just really like her. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, birds are very intelligent.
Very smart. Yeah.
There's it's seasonal. There's a murder of crows on a couple of different corners around my neighborhood, and you can tell that they remember you. I mean, I say that because I go for a run most mornings, and so I have to run past this perched murder. There must be 20, 30 crows in the mornings, and you can tell that they look at me and let me go for my run. But I can see with other people that have maybe tried to, you know, like swipe them away, doing the same thing. The crows get quite territorial and even swoop some of them. So they definitely remember faces and yeah.
Yeah, and I was never more convinced. We had this lovebird for a while, and when he wanted something, he would run at you, wings back, mouth open, tongue out. I'm like, I can see the Tyrannosaurus Rex right here. He's this big, and he thinks he is one. They're crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Oh,
Well, I
yeah.
mean, birds are dinosaurs, right? They're the
Yeah.
closest ancestor that we have to dinosaurs. So,
Yeah.
mm.
So, getting back to this album, I really like the little fuzz out and clicks that were added in here and there. How did you kind of come up with that concept, and what did you use to kind of achieve that kind of? At one point, it almost sounded like the guy from Predator with the tick, tick, tick.
Like kind of the
Mhm.
glitchy, yeah, the glitchy
Mm.
effect on some of the distorted guitars. Yeah.
Hmm. So that's an effect called a tremolo effect. And to anybody that doesn't noodle around with like audio effects and audio production, it almost sounds like there's like a chopping effect to a signal, similar to like when you talk into the back of a fan and the rate's quite high and you start sounding a little more robotic. That's an extreme version of a tremolo. So the faster the rate is, the more choppy and quickly sounding it is. But of course, you can relax that rate, and it might sound like that clickiness, as you were referring to, would be more spaced out. It's an effect that we introduced on the album prior to this, Apex Sapien, and I guess just really enjoyed the sound of it. Like it does sound quite sci-fi, and it sounds to us it sounds a little bit different. Like you'll often hear bands using chorus, which we also use. We also use a chorus effect in certain songs, and flanges, and then obviously like delays and reverbs, and they all evoke different, I guess, feelings. But the tremolo, I feel is just like a very underused effect because it's just one simple effect. It's not combined with any other effect. Or I mean, the vocals, there is a little bit of pitch shifting that's blended in with some other tracks underneath it. But I guess I just think it sounds cool. Like I just think it
Yeah, it's very
sounds,
distinctive. I haven't heard
yeah,
that in death metal by really anyone else used that way that you guys use it. It's very distinctive.
yeah. So there is a band called Nithing, um, and Nithing's a great band. They're like a brutal death metal band. They also use it, and we weren't aware that they use it as much until when their recent album came out, which is fantastic. I feel everybody should go listen to it. But when that came out, we had already produced our record. So it was like, huh, I guess great minds maybe think alike, if we're
Right,
allowed to
right.
say that
Yeah.
about our own band. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But that is the only band that I know of. But they've also kind of been monikered as a band that is really pushing the envelope as far as like the sonic exploration of brutal death metal, which is very cool. But
Mm.
it's a super neat effect, and I like live. It's got a very unique. It feels very unique to play it. Like I can perceive the audience who have maybe never heard of us before, just being like, "What is going on right now?" And that's kind of cool.
Yeah. It almost reminded me a little bit of like Mick Gordon's video game music, like another
There you
Australian,
go. There you
he's
go. Yeah.
recording chainsaws and making it into music, so
Hmm.
reminded me of that
Is
a
that
little
the
bit.
guy? Is that the guy that did the Doom
Yeah. Yeah.
soundtrack? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a great soundtrack. I'm not much of a gamer at all, but um, yeah, that's definitely a great kind of like gym
That's
workout
a
record.
speaker destroying type
Yeah,
of music. It really is. I mean, if there ever was one.
Yeah,
yeah. There you go.
He has a Doom shirt, and people always want to talk to him about the game. He's like, "Oh, I've never played the game.
Never
I just
played
listen
it.
to the music."
I just like Mick
Yeah.
Gordon, yeah. So
Oh, that's cool. There you go. Aussie metal represent. Yeah.
there you go, Aussie metal. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right, so I know you already got to you answered my Kingdom of Cortisol question already. What about the salted anesthesia, which was one of my favorites?
Yeah, I really like that one.
But
Yeah.
when I was trying to figure out, when it's Stygian, is that like back to the river Styx? And again, it's kind of like
Yeah.
darkness.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So Stygian is typically used to describe the river. But I guess again in artistic liberty, it didn't the way that we fit the words into the song, which is, I guess, quite a close chorus, I guess, if we were to call it that. To reshuffle the words to, I mean, how else would you say it? Like a Stygian marinate, like, or yeah, it just didn't quite work. We all love the word salt and what salt means in other ways. And so to have this specimen that's salted in this like Stygian brine, was it definitely illustrated a much closer representation of what that section of the concept is supposed to be. But that song in particular is describing the process of the specimen being infiltrated by this prototypical system. So its skin's being punctured and its lungs are being filled and it's etc. Excuse me. So it's quite a graphic song in that sense. So it's interesting too that musically there's quite a bit more melody in that track as well, given the lyrical depictions. But yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, we love Jordan's performance. He gets so into it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried he's gonna crack his head one day or something.
Mm-hmm.
We've had stories where very physical people have hurt each other, have gotten hurt.
Yeah, what were some
Mm-hmm.
of the memories you had from the tour? I mean, high points of the tour with Cognitive. How did that go?
Yeah, it was great. It was quite a short tour. So, we kind of wish that it was double the length, like a couple of weeks to be out. Feels more like a run than a tour, but It was very cool. It was a fly-in for us. So we normally tour with our own van. So it was nice to share a van with Dysentery, and kind of hang out with all those guys. They're super cool. And obviously the cognitive guys are so nice. I'm not sure if you guys know either of those bands very closely, but they're all super cool. There were no assholes, which I don't know how this band has managed to go on the tours that we have and not have an asshole, like one asshole on any of the tours. Like I don't
Yeah, it's
like
mathematically
it's
improbable.
yeah. Statistically, it's like we're kind of fucked because it should mean that every other tour is just full of assholes
Yeah, yeah.
moving forward. I guess some of our favorite memories. I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak for myself. But we had a day off in Tennessee. We all went camping. So yeah, I guess just getting a little buzzed and just going for a swim there and having some downtime and sleeping in a little cabin and stuff out there with the rain was quite nice. And the drives through that part of the country are really quite different. You know, you've kind of got the shoulder of Appalachia right by. So that was the scenery and the beauty between there and places like North Carolina was just amazing. When we were in Virginia Beach, we had a nice ocean swim, and it was nice to feel a nice warm ocean as opposed to the frigid, cold Canadian Western Ocean.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, we did. I mean, we had a lot of food. So there were some highlights there. Albany had some amazing food. Albany's show was particularly cool. I mean, every day was a highlight. I'd be here for a long time if I was to list everything. I mean, the more I recall the tour, the more things I'm remembering that were all really highlights. But
Yeah,
it was a great tour. Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, we were so glad to have found you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for coming out.
Well, we play a game on the show.
Mhm.
If you're up for a game, it's called Blaspheming Monikers. Okay.
Okay.
Here's how it works. Okay. I have 5 band names in front of me. One of them is made up. So you have to guess
Okay.
which one of these is a fake metal band. Okay.
And if you miss it, you'll get another chance.
You just keep going until we run out. So, okay. All right. Twilight Hammer, Lobotomy Hammer. Hang on. All right. So Twilight Hammer, Lobotomy Hammer, Clunge Hammer, Melissa's Hammer, and Cattle Hammer.
Well, I've got to say, Lobotomy Hammer is the best of them all. So if that's not a band,
You think that's the fake one? Lobotomy Hammer?
no, that's definitely a band. Like that has
Okay.
to be a band name because that's cool.
Okay.
Melissa's Hammer, I'm gonna say, is also a band. Maybe somebody called Melissa is even in the band. Sorry, what were the other 3?
It's Twilight Hammer,
Twilight
Plunge
Hammer.
Hammer, and Cattle Hammer.
Plunge Hammer.
With a C. C is in cat.
Clunge Hammer. Well, that sounds like it's like some weird interpersonal joke amongst friends. Twilight Hammer sounds like, I don't know, some cheeseball metaphysical wannabe something. What was the 5th one? Sorry,
Cattle Hammer.
Cattle Hammer. I'm gonna go with Cattle Hammer. That's not a band.
Okay, they're real. They're UK drone metal, and they have a new EP that just came out. So
Okay, so there's Cattle Decapitation and there's Cattle Hammer.
now there's Cattle
Guys,
Hammer.
this goes out to you.
Yeah.
maybe Cow Hammer, or Bovine Hammer, maybe. But there's
All right, so that leaves Twilight,
okay.
Lobotomy,
So yeah.
Plunge, or Melissa's. So
Well, Clunge, I don't even know what clunge means. My brain goes to clench. It's not a plunge, just based on the fact that I don't know what clunge is. or a slang for. I'm gonna go with clunge hammer next.
Okay. They're a UK thrash band.
What's
have an
okay?
EP.
I need
They
to
have an EP
pause.
called Plunge 'Em All. I don't get it either, but they're
Okay,
real. So.
okay. UK. Are these friends? Are these
No,
are these hammer and clunge? Are these cow clunges? That's a better name, cow clunge.
Cow plunge, I like.
it is weird that there's so many UK ones. That's weird.
It's very weird.
They
Yeah.
must really like their hammers over there. I don't know.
All right, we're gonna go Melissa next.
That's it. Yep, you got it. Melissa's hammer was the
Got
one I
it.
made up. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
No, it's
There we
very well
go.
played. Very thoughtfully done. Yeah.
Well, not thoughtful enough. I still fucked up. So
Yeah, I enjoy doing this because I love scrolling through, and my favorite pictures on Metal Archives are where everybody dressed up but one guy, and they still use that picture. Like everybody's in corpse paint, and then one guy's got like a New Jersey Devils,
yeah,
jersey on, and I'm like,
yeah,
that's the one you're going to use.
yeah. I don't know. At that point, it's just kind of like, why is everybody wearing the corpse paint? Like you can only like you kind of fucked. Like you look worse for trying to look staunch. That's my personal opinion. Just curiously though, do the other two hammer bands, do they also reside in the UK or are
Let me
they
see.
outside of
It's
the UK?
Twilight Hammer is Black Thrash from Ontario.
Okay.
Let me see.
Well, they were
Everybody else
black.
is
Okay, that
UK.
makes sense.
Lobotomy
Everybody else is
Hammer's
UK.
also they're death metal from
Okay.
UK. So yeah.
Okay. If there's anybody in the UK watching this, explain your scene.
Why do you have so many hammer
What?
bands?
Yeah. What the fuck? Like a hammer's illegal in the UK? Like what's the sense of hardness with a hammer over there?
It's weird.
Please
Like
let us know.
it's not unusual when I'm doing this. I've noticed because we've been doing it for a while. When I pick the word, if it's goat or it might be tomb or whatever, there's often certain countries that really like that word. Like I'll be like, wow, there's 3 Brazilian bands that have goat in the name. Like I don't know what it is. There's geographical parallels between these band names that it's not the first time I've had this. Yeah. So.
Speaking of which, I mean, like I'm not some consultant for band names here, but if there's anything that makes me really, it's a bad band name. I was in a record store yesterday and I picked up a Goat Penis LP, and I thought almost like Goat Cock. Yeah, that's fucking sick. Goat Penis. It's like it's not very, it's not very proud. Like fuck you. It's like it's proper in like a weird bestial way, which just kind of counteracts the whole thing.
Yeah.
And maybe English isn't the first language, I'm not sure, but I feel like I could get behind a band called Goat Cock. I don't know that I can get behind a band called Goat Penis,
A little too, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it really doesn't matter your band name. I mean, Foo Fighters is a terrible band name.
I mean,
Imagine
that
Dragons sounds like it took 5
but,
minutes on the bus,
But the Foo Fighters was based on like the planes in World War II, I believe. So at least there's like that. I guess, the word foo is, I don't know, there's Fu Manchu, which I think is fucking pretty cool as well. I don't think Foo Fighters is like terrible. I think there's definitely some, Clunge Hammer's a fucking pretty bad name. It's pretty bad. But I mean, if they're releasing albums like Clunge 'Em All, like they obviously aren't serious about it. So all the power to them. Like they're probably laughing about how dumb it is as well.
It's like an in-joke, like you said.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. Each to their own, but
yeah, each their own.
Yeah. I love it. So what is upcoming next for you guys? I was kind of hoping to see you at Maryland Death Fest, maybe.
That'd be great. I don't know. We do have to loop in with our agent about what's happening with some of the bids that are going on there. I guess what's in our control right now is what we're most focused on. It's going to be getting quite cold here in North America, so we have been hoping to do some Canadian shows because we have really been neglecting our own country for shows. So I think it's important that we play our own backyard a little more coming up. So we do, we are in talks with some other bands about that. But it's just kind of like at the talk stage. There's a lot of other things going on, lots of other projects that I can't really give away at this point. Otherwise, it's not going to be a surprise and people aren't going to be too excited. Instead, they'll be getting very impatient and being like, when is this happening? So there's lots happening. We have been writing, so we are hoping to get into the studio pretty soon, just to kind of start getting the sketches for those songs together. I won't give too much away, but we are thinking about doing something a little differently with these songs. But that's all I will say about that right now. But yeah, you can expect more content coming up, and we're kind of hoping to connect with people a little more about the process of recording the album and the artwork, and just having more kind of long form discussions about all that stuff. Because one thing that we're very grateful for is that people that do really understand this band seem to really latch on to all the associated principles and production ideas that go on, with how we present the final product to people. And I'm also like a total nerd for that. Like I love watching studio footage and interviews with certain artists and things. So there's some of that in the pipe. I guess on more of the other business side of things, we have launched a US store with Masker merch, which is great. So any of our state-sided friends now have the option of not just purchasing $20 spin exclusive merch and items, but also through Masker merch. So we will have some new exciting stuff available exclusively through Masker merch as well, which is very exciting.
$20 spin now. They're like Metal Blade in the 80s. I mean, the guys got the best taste,
It's fucked up. Yeah. I was talking with Nate about this, and his project Spirit Adrift, quite closely tied with $20 spin. And yeah, we were just talking offline about how like it's stupid. Like it's stupid how sick it is. And we feel very grateful that Dave at $20 spin, I mean, he's got the ability to sign any interesting band. And like I say any band because he doesn't exclusively do metal. Like he does anything that he really enjoys. And to be a part of their roster, it feels very special to us that we were selected as one of the bands that they enjoy listening to enough, especially considering that we don't really fit the mold of most of their death metal bands. We're not on the slower side, we're not on the rawer side. We're vastly different. So yeah, it's very cool. We're very grateful, and they're a great label, and yeah, Dave's a super cool guy. So
who was it we talked to from Cognitive? Was it Paul?
No.
Rob?
No. Rob.
Yeah, Rob.
Yeah.
We interviewed Rob from Cognitive, and he was saying that about their latest album because it was going to be on Metal Blade. And he was like, literally, he was like, guys, we got to fucking step it up because we're not going to make a shitty album on Metal Blade Records, That was pretty funny,
Yeah, Rob, if you listen to this, send me an email. These voice messages are very hard for me to keep track of. I love you, buddy, but I need this in writing if we're going to communicate. I love you, buddy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I do feel that when we were in an interesting spot because we were on a smaller label called Transcending Obscurity. Well, Transcending Obscurity put out our first EP, Divinity, and our first album was through 20 Buck Spin. So I don't really know if our our mission statement was to create the best debut album that we possibly could. And we're just fortunate enough that that came out on 20 Buck Spin. Like, that's pretty cool. Like, your first album coming out on 20 Buck Spin for any band that's doing this stuff is pretty fucking cool. But I think, not to take away from 20 Buck Spin being 20 Buck Spin, but like, regardless of whether it was self-released or not, I feel like every album should be the best that you can possibly do, because albums have got an interesting way of just kind of, I don't know, they've each got their own destinies, and some of them are in bargain bins, and others are cult classics 40 years after they're released, and others are one-hit wonders, and others are just like sensations overnight. You don't really know what's going to happen. So it's important that you try not to just do what's current and do what you think might appease a particular label, and just do you, because the trends of this style of music comes and goes, and it feels like there's a cycle every 15, 20 years of what's cool and what's not. I mean, when I first championed Mortician, I was the guy in high school loving this stuff, and my other metal listening friends were all about guitar solos and like this like athletic approach to music, and it's like, faster is better, and the more musically inclined it is, the better. Like, how can you listen to that shit? And it's just like, bro, this is like the heaviest fucking band in the universe. Like, if you actually listen to this, like, what the like, there's no argument to be made.
Right.
And now it's like, you could see that there's quite a lot of like hardcore and hardcore adjacent people discovering death metal through like some very popular bands now that are doing the bolt thrower, the obituary kind of take on it. So it's like it's like a much easier access point. So when you've got those slower, down-tuned, heavier sections in like those bite-sized sections, people that are coming into it from that style are like, oh yeah, I can get into this. This is like sick. And all of a sudden, Mortician is like a trendy band in some ways again. And it's just, it's like crazy to me that happens, because as I said, 20 years ago, it wasn't cool. It was like, you're a Mortician fan, which means that, you've had a fucking lobotomy hammer or
Exactly.
or elsewhere. So just I mean, the new Cognitive album's fucking great, but Rob, if you're listening, the next one's got to be better.
I love how much you ever think about making a little like book to go along with it, because it's so much in that story. It reminds me of, we talked to Axamena, who's these crazy guys out of Belgium. And when I was finding out about, they kind of had a concept EP they just put out, and it's all about the first person and the last person melding and how it creates all these chain reactions and ripples. I'm like, I'm going to need a manual for this.
Yeah. I've never, I don't think the band's ever really thought about like a book or anything. I think if there was ever going to be like any real companion to like our music, I would just say time. Like, I genuinely feel like the more time that you spend in the world of our albums, the more of it gets painted in front of you. I'm not trying to say listen to this a million times because it's going to boost our numbers and it's going to make us more popular. I just genuinely feel that by design, this band is our music, especially on the latest record, I'm hoping anyways, gives you more with the more investment that you put into it, and the more sense it will make. I'm hoping anyways. And if it doesn't, maybe time in other parts of the life will kind of synthesize some of our points. As I said, it's not for everybody, but if there was to be a companion, I without just blatantly describing what's going on, which is not really the point of this band. Like, it's like if we had the meaning of life, like how boring would life be? Like it would just take away the magic of this entire experience. Like there's some things I feel like it just need to be a wonder, need to be a magic. And I'm not saying this band's magical to everybody, but I do think that there is a magic in just spending time simmering in the wonderment of other worlds that bands like us are trying to manifest. And there's other bands too, so yeah.
Yeah, there's, like you were saying, we're runners too. In fact, we're probably running later, probably into a thunderstorm. But there's nothing better for my mindset to put on an album like this and just go run and lose yourself. And it's great in the headphones, but this is one of those albums that you could just kind of you'll forget. Oh, you're like, oh wow, we're done, and you haven't even really thought about the run. I love that, and thank you for that gift.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's my gift to my, it's my love letter to music in my own personal way as well. I'm sure the other guys, I would hope feel the other way, the same way. Sorry, but I too, like, I listen to, my favorite way to listen to music is when I'm running, or it's with the lights off, and I'm actively listening. I'm not passively listening. But yeah, there's just something about heavy and extreme music when there's a musical story about it. There's these high points, there's these lower points. It really accentuates like a workout. Like pushing through something and feeling like the power in you, and just like feeling inspired to just like go faster, go longer, go harder. It's cool.
Yeah, the kind of handcrafted way that you put your music together with blending, making some of your own language and stuff. It reminds me, I used to be really into Paul Chain, the Italian doom singer, and he did that. He made his own words. He made his own. Not all his lyrics were a discrete language, and I couldn't get friends into them because they wanted to figure it out. And I was always like, you don't have to solve everything, like maybe it just is what it is. Just it is what it is to you. Why does everything have to have why do you have to figure it out? Just leave the mystery unsolved, like.
I used to have this conversation with a friend of mine who's no longer here. And we would have these very interesting conversations about everything, really. But one of my favorite conversations that we had was the difference between intelligence and what he called extelligence. And I wish he were here now, because I'd like to ask him if he meant extelligence or if he meant zentelligence. But I mean, even just kind of having that dialogue about like we know what that means. We know that there's a difference between a wisdom from something that's been put in you and a wisdom from things around you that you are linked in with or to. But I don't, I'm not not a linguist. Like, my lexicon is nowhere near as expansive as many other people's. But as I said, I do have the artistic liberty to try and express certain things by connecting several different things. So Proto-Genesis is like the very first track. It's like Proto, we understand Proto. Zen, we understand Zen, and we understand Genesis, right? So I would hope that's a pretty easy title to kind of understand, like straight off the bat, like what is going on. And that's not to say that everybody does, but to me, I don't know how much more clear I could be without spelling it out. But if I have to spell it out, like, well, it's I've made an album, like if that's not spelling it out enough, I don't know what you want, but
I'm going back to Hammer Smash Face. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was great. Thanks for taking the time and your very candid answers. Very, very refreshing.
And I learned a lot.
Yes, we learned a lot. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you wanting to have a chat. And
that's great.
We're really happy to hear that, going out on tour and being able to meet people like yourselves that connect with it. Like that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So very grateful that, both of you came early to see all the bands on tour. Because, you're effectively spreading the word of what other artists do, and it's as important as the albums and being on tour is as well. So thank you for doing this, and we appreciate your review and everything else that you're doing. So the pleasure is all ours.
I see big things coming for you guys. We were at a small venue, and one of the opening acts we had not heard before was Escuela Grind. And we did an interview with her a while ago, and that they blew up. I just knew they would. And I feel the same thing will happen with this band. And next time you come through, I bet it's be at the Baltimore Soundstage or something.
Bigger venue. I could see that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I get the same
Thanks.
thought.
Yeah. I mean, we try to just, I personally don't have any real expectations. Like, if success comes in any multitude of ways, like I'm grateful for it. But I mean, as long as I can play, I'm kind of happy. And I don't know if it would be a better experience to people, but I don't know. I don't really know what to say to that. It's very kind of you.
This is the Snaggletooth Extreme Metal Podcast.